Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Morhonda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got
Another
it!
one!
Oladipo!
Another one! Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Galloway finds Rob Finnessy, who fires the three, and
He hit it!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, welcome into another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Morhonda of Bloomington. Obviously, Jim Coyle not here with us right now. He is on his way to the airport, as far as I'm concerned. So we may be, you know how it typically goes, Dustin. Anytime Jim's going to the airport, he's usually hiding in a bush, doing something insane. So we never know what's going to happen on days like this. So we'll likely hear from Jim at some point during today's show. But thanks for tuning in with us. As always, regardless, today on the program, we should have Don Fischer back with us, Dustin Dopirak back with us, and everybody you want to hear from after that incredibly insane loss from Indiana this past weekend against Arizona in what I thought was called the Las Vegas Clash. It's called The Clash, presented by the Halal Brothers, I think is what that interesting sponsor was for Indiana's neutral site game this past weekend. But that is neither here nor there. Thanks for joining us this morning. With us, as always, I already mentioned him earlier, Dustin Schutte from Outsider.com, wearing his Outsider hoodie, and he's got a Braves hat on this morning, I believe.
I do. I'm representing. I got a lot of different hats I got to show off, a lot of shirts I got to show off. So, you know what? I think we're in good hands as long as Jim's not trying to do the show from the actual airplane. Like he's teased before. As long as he's not irritating, a couple hundred people on a flight, I think we're in good shape. So hopefully he didn't pull that stunt.
Yeah, it would definitely be hilarious from our point of view, but it would definitely cause a lot of problems. So definitely hoping that he does not choose to go that route this morning. But glad you guys are with us. I see the Andy Morhonda hotline's already rolling. We'll get to that here in just a minute, but let's go in and just give our opening thoughts on this game against Arizona this past Saturday. Definitely one of the more insane college basketball games that I have seen so far this year. Definitely the most intense one that Indiana has been in. And I know everybody said this during the game, on the broadcast, after the fact, but it was one of those games, Dustin, that it just felt like an NCAA tournament environment. Both teams had numerous fans there. I mean, I was genuinely surprised at the amount of Indiana fans that traveled all the way out to Vegas. So, I mean, it was the perfect environment for the marquee matchup that it was, and the way that things were going, especially in the second half when it was kind of more back and forth, it definitely had the excitement of an NCAA tournament matchup.
Yeah, I mean, Gus Johnson said it on the broadcast. It was basically an Indiana home game, and so that's a huge shout out to anybody who made the trip from Bloomington or wherever you were located out to Las Vegas. I'm sure that Las Vegas, typically there's a large contingency of really any sort of fans out there. So it was really cool to hear that environment. It was basically, I sent out a tweet. It was basically Bloomington West out in Las Vegas. So that was really unique and really cool. But what you just mentioned, John, is something I was talking about last week with Zach Osterman and Alec Lasley, in that I thought that the way that Arizona plays, their style of basketball, they're going to run up and down the floor. They're going to shoot as many shots as they can possibly get up in 40 minutes. That's how games are won and lost in the NCAA tournament. That's how a lot of teams play. That's how teams that advance, that's their style of basketball. So even though Indiana lost this game, I thought it was really good experience because I know that they played in the tournament last year, but this is a taste of, for some of these newer guys, of what it's going to be like to play in that NCAA tournament, what it's going to take to win some of those games. So I thought that was really important. We can get into the specifics, but one of the things I wanted to take away is, we've talked about this before we logged on today, was the fact that basically, anytime Indiana made some sort of push or any sort of run, Arizona had a response. And you can look at that one of two ways. Indiana wasn't able to close the gap. They weren't able to finish any of these runs. But the way I looked at it was they didn't have Jalen Hood-Schifino, and they continued to knock on the door. They did not let Arizona just run away with this, because there were times in this game when it was, a 20-point game, and you thought Indiana's going to roll over and this is going to be an easy win for Arizona. But they got the lead down to 3 or 4 points a couple times in the game. So I thought we saw some resiliency, which, again, last week I said I'm not worried about the wins and losses against Arizona and Kansas. I'm more worried about what's your competitive level like. And at the very least, I think we saw that on Saturday. This team did not give up. They continued to fight. I know the final score doesn't maybe reflect that, but I think that that's one really big positive you can take away from Saturday's game.
Well, that's the thing about this Arizona team. I mean, we were talking about it before the show started. I mean, you could be within 3 or 4 points, and in less than a minute and a half, it's back up to 12.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you saw throughout the entirety of the second half. And taking another step back and looking more at the beginning of the game and not having Jalen Hood-Schifino, it seemed like this team didn't really know what to do in a big game like this, missing one of their key scoring pieces. And so it took them a while to kind of figure out. I mean, and they were stunned. It's like they didn't know that Arizona was going to run up and down the floor the way that they did. I'm not saying that Mike Woodson didn't have them prepared, but it's almost like they just weren't expecting it to be as defeating, I guess, in the way that it was. And so there was a lot of things going wrong, but there was also a lot going right. I mean, the 3-point shot kind of opened up in the second half. Race Thompson knocked down 4. 3 of them were back-to-back. Tamar Bates came in and made a few huge shots. And so whenever the team needed points, which was a lot, many times during this game, they didn't lead except for early on in the game. I mean, the team stepped up, like you said, and it's going to be interesting to see what this team looks like going forward. I mean, they probably won't play another team like Arizona the rest of the season, especially in the Big Ten. There's not really, unless you can correct me, there's not really a team in the Big Ten that runs up and down like Arizona does.
Not that I've seen so far. There might be some other teams that are capable of doing that, but they're not going to be as talented and as quick as what we saw from Arizona, at least in my opinion. I think what's interesting, John, is I don't know if this team got necessarily shell-shocked as much as in those first couple minutes of that game when they got down big. What I thought happened was when you have defensive breakdowns and you can't get a stop, and Indiana it really hangs their hat on the defensive end. We talked about it. Indiana's going to win a lot of basketball games because of their defense this season. You just hope that their offense and their shooting can do enough to put them over the hump. And in some of these type of games where you have to get big baskets, they just didn't have enough firepower. I don't know that it was shell shock so much as it was, man, I just feel like they felt a little kind of, what do we got to do here? Because to get down 20 points, to be a really good defensive team and to find yourself down 20, can't get a stop really to save your life. I think that there was a lot of demoralizing baskets Arizona was able to score early in that game. But again, you got to give Indiana credit because they were able to fight back. And again, to me, there's just certain situations where these are the type of games where I'm going to harp on this, even though it's not going to change because it's been 3 years and it's still not going to change. Trayce Jackson-Davis not having a jump shot kills this team. I mean, in these type of games, it kills this team because if he gets it on the low block and he's double teamed, he's going to have to pass it out. If he gets it free throw line or further out, he's going to pass. I mean, basically, he's looking one-on-one type of situations. And just having the ability to shoot 3 or 4 shots, you don't have to make them. But being a threat in those areas makes a world of difference. It stretches the floor. It makes Arizona have to defend you. I don't know. That's one thing that they're going to have to figure something out because other teams like Arizona, and we saw this with going over to the Purdue game. We saw this with Nebraska and Purdue. They were able to figure out how to defend Zach Edey. Now Purdue's going to have some problems going the rest of the season. If teams figure out a way to stop Trayce Jackson-Davis, it's going to be a little bit longer of a season for Indiana than what we had previously thought.
Yeah, there's definitely times, especially early on in this game, where I was just sitting there. I'm like, this is just same old Indiana. They haven't improved over what their issues were last season. I mean, I guess what more can you expect when you have a team full of veterans, when many of these guys have more than likely already hit their ceiling as college basketball players?
That's a good point.
And really, you don't have, other than maybe Trace Jackson Davis and the new guys, Malik Renew and Jalen Hood-Schifino, you really don't have many guys who are going to be making some noise in the NBA. And so whenever you look at what you had last year and all of the production that's come back, yes, it's great that you have that production, but how much more can you ask of them over what you've already seen in previous seasons?
Well, I think the big takeaway from this game too is that this was not a big man game. This is not a pack the paint type of game for Indiana. This is a game where your guards have to win games. And you look, Xavier Johnson, 3 of 13, 1 of 4 from 3-point. Trey Galloway, 2 of 5 from the floor, didn't attempt a 3-point shot. Now I know Xavier had 11 assists, so he was able to contribute in other ways. But these are the games we've talked about where when you need good guard play, Xavier Johnson has got to step up in these moments. And if he doesn't, it's probably going to be a long night for Indiana. But you look, if he knocks down 3 or 4 more of those shots that he took, you're talking about a single-digit game. It changes the whole trajectory of the game. So we're getting nitpicky. I honestly believe there are more positives to take away from this than there are negatives. But when you have a loss, when you have a 14-point loss, you tend to go towards the negatives. Again, I can talk all day. I thought they got good production from Tamar Bates. They did not fold when they very easily could have. They used the crowd that they had in Las Vegas to surge some comebacks, even though they weren't able to cap them off. So I think there are a lot of positives. And 10 of 25 from 3-point. That's where you want to be. If you would have said Indiana's going to knock down 10 of 25, I said we're going to have a hell of a ball game. But it just
funny. Arizona also went 10 of 25.
Right, exactly. So I mean, and the other thing was this game was basically decided at the free throw line. Arizona got there 25 times, made 17. Indiana only got there 9 times, made 7. Now I'm sure fans are going to chime in here a little bit and maybe talk about the officiating, but that's just life in college basketball. Sometimes the whistle's not going to go your way, and you got to find a way to counter that. And Indiana just did not make enough shots.
Yeah, and I guess since you just touched on officiating, we might as well go ahead and bring this up. I mean, maybe bring this up with Don Fischer as well. The goaltending that never was. Obviously, you can't go back and review a call that wasn't called, but you can review something that was called. So if you're the official, why not? What's the harm in calling the goaltend? And if you want to second guess yourself, go back and look at it after the fact instead of not calling it at all.
I mean, I don't know. What is really interesting to me is, look, you can see the shot from the front of the basket, and it looked like goaltending, but you don't really know where the basketball is at that point. There's another view underneath the hoop where it looks like that ball is clearing the rim, or at least it's going to get to the rim. And there's an official standing right there. I mean, just dead eye on the basketball, has a great shot of it, and no whistle. Like that was the crazy thing to me. Like sometimes officials are not in good position. Sometimes, things happen. But this guy was looking straight at the basket and decided not to call it. I mean,
it seemed like the entire arena, Arizona fans included, was reacted as if that should have been a goaltending call. So, but
I got some text that said, "Boy, that was egregious. That was an egregious miss," and that was a big factor in the game. Now, obviously, you can't say Indiana's going to win if they get that call, but I mean, those sort of calls do make an impact.
Well, then the very next play, we talked about this earlier as well before the show. Indiana goes down. I believe it's Jordan Geronimo. Forgive me if I'm wrong on this, but Jordan Geronimo gets called for a flop technical. Yeah. And so that sequence of events is usually one of those that you always go back to and say that was kind of when things really changed for Indiana. And Indiana at that point, they weren't out of the game.
No.
But it's whenever you have the momentum and it's snatched right out of you in the most unfortunate of ways, that can be really hard to bounce back from, especially when it feels like Arizona wasn't doing anything to get that momentum back. You were either shooting yourself in the foot or a third party was interfering. The officials is what I'm
right.
But, yeah. Let's go ahead. I guess Dustin, you want to hit up some of these comments, and then we'll hit our first break. And
yeah, let's
wait
do it.
for Mr. Don Fischer. We got a very active Andy Moore Honda hotline.
Shocker, right?
Michelle Reuter says Arizona is probably the best team they will play all year. Like the fight in the second half. Unfortunately, Arizona had an answer each time. Yeah, we hit on that earlier, and it looks like Mr. Don Fischer is in the green room waiting for us. So we're going to go ahead and take our first break. You are listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Good morning, Don.
How we doing, guys?
Good morning.
Doing good. Mr. Jim Coyle is on his way to the airport, we believe. So we're taking over until he is able to show back up.
You mean he's still in Las Vegas?
He stayed an extra day, correct?
Oh my goodness!
he might be sleeping off Las Vegas. We don't know yet.
Yeah, he might be.
Well, I got home at 4 o'clock in the morning on yesterday, so I know of what he's dealing with. But I would think that he just basically said, "I'm staying an extra day. Screw you guys."
I think that's exactly what it was.
Yeah,
Man.
no big deal. No biggie.
How was the trip?
He really appreciated that little cameo appearance in his post-game show that you made with Dean Garrett and Pat Knight.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I mean, it was really. I mean, we got done with we weren't even done with our broadcast. These guys, Winston Morgan, Dean Garrett, Pat Knight, a friend of mine from years gone by named Mike Johnson, who lives out there. All those guys showed up at the same moment in our post-game show. And so my engineer was all over my butt because I kept turning around and talking to these guys, and they're hugging me and all this kind of stuff. And because I hadn't seen a lot of these guys in a long time. I hadn't seen Winston Morgan in 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And so and Dean, I've seen several times over the years, but I hadn't seen Winston forever. And I hadn't seen Pat Knight since he left Indiana. So that was over 20 years ago. So at any rate, it was kind of a cool night in that regard, just to see all these guys at the end of the ball game. And
Jim was saying that he thinks that his appearance on his show was Pat Knight's first time doing any sort of IU media in 20 years as well.
I don't know if that's true or not. I don't think that that may be true. I don't know. I have no idea. I know Pat works for the Indiana Pacers, and he talks to my wife all the time. My wife works for the Pacers as well, and she's she's talked to Pat for years, and he's relayed hellos and all that kind of stuff to me through her. But I hadn't seen him or talked to him since he left IU. So
that's cool.
Anyway, it was cool to see all those guys. It really was.
All right. It's about that time. I'm going to bring us back in.
In Limestone, with their love of Southern eateries. With quality, local, and organic food as their main focus, Southern Stone strives to always provide their guests with an exceptional dining experience. With weekly specials, quick, attentive service, Southern Stone Restaurant provides delicious 5-star comfort food with a Southern charm at 2-star prices. Southern Stone Restaurant is part of Endeavor Hospitality's Wow Club.
This segment is brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. This segment brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant, home of Inside Indiana Basketball with Mike Woodson and Don Fischer, who joins us now, fresh off his trip from Las Vegas, calling the game as Indiana took the loss against Arizona this past Saturday. Thanks for joining us this morning, Don. Obviously, Jim not with us. He may or may not be joining us shortly. But what are some of your opening thoughts on the outcome of this past weekend's game?
Well, obviously disappointed that Indiana didn't play better, especially in the first 10 minutes of the game. That's when Indiana got stung pretty good by Arizona, down 19 points within, 9 minutes of the contest getting underway. I mean, I thought I don't know if Indiana came out and wasn't ready to play. I don't know if they were casual approaching this game. I don't know what that scenario is because obviously they came out on Thursday. The team got there on Thursday. I was out there all week, but nevertheless, I just don't know if they were quite ready for what they were about to face. And Arizona is one of the best teams in the country. There's no doubt in my mind. I don't care that they got beat by Utah. Everybody thought, well, how'd that happen? Well, it happened because they came back from Hawaii and they weren't ready to play. And so they got beat by Utah, which is a pretty good basketball team in itself. And the next thing you know, Indiana goes up against them and looks the same way that Arizona looked against Utah. They just didn't play up to their capabilities in that early part of the game. I will say this, and there were two things that bothered me. I thought that casual start, or at least the way that looked like it was a casual start, that was part of it. The second thing that bothered me the most was just what Arizona did to Indiana's inside game and points in the paint in this contest. They were dominated 42-22 points in the paint, which means that Trace, Race, Malik, those guys didn't get the job done inside. And that's concerning without question. That can't happen. And if it does happen more often than not, this is going to be a struggle for this Indiana basketball team the rest of the year. But I think it's a bit of an anomaly. And again, I think the approach in this game might have been the biggest problem.
Well, one of the things, Don, I was curious about, you talked about the first 9 or 10 minutes of that basketball game. I don't know if shell-shocked is the right word, but it seemed like to me, Indiana, we know that they hang their hat on defense, and Mike Woodson talks about defense. But when you're not able to get any stops, it just kind of looked like they were looking around like, how are we supposed to stop this team? Now, at some point, they were able to get their offense going, but defensively, I thought there was just a lot of confusion, at least early in the early portion of that game, almost like a scratching of the head, like nobody's supposed to be able to do this to us. We're pretty good defensively, but and to me, that was the biggest difference in that ball game, because outside of those first 9 or 10 minutes, this was a back and forth contest.
Right. I mean, that's the thing that bothers you the most. And again, that to me, that signals, were we ready to play? I mean, was Indiana ready to play this ball game? What was their approach to it? And those are questions I think that Mike Woodson will have to answer. And I think the rest of the team will have to answer here. We're going to have him on the talk show tonight. We'll see what he has to say in that regard. But he said he didn't think Indiana played very well throughout the game. He was not pleased throughout this contest with what his team was able to do. So we'll get more of a picture of what his thoughts are on tonight's Inside IU basketball show. But I just thought the approach, and I wasn't in their meetings, their team meetings leading up to this game. But you get on a trip. They went out there on Thursday, so they had an extra day there that they normally wouldn't have on a regular road trip. Did they have a chance to go out and experience Las Vegas a little bit? And I'm not saying that they went out and got crazy. They didn't do that. But at the same time, what was the approach? I mean, were they casual? Was it too casual? Was it not a business trip, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that may be an issue that Mike probably addresses with this ball club. I don't think there's much question about that. And the other thing is, again, the bigs inside here, they need to make a pact that, hey, I mean, and we'll give Race Thompson credit. I mean, he knocks down 4 threes. That's a career high for him. Yeah. Hey, he only made 3 3-pointers leading up to this ball game this season. Had struggled mightily. He was 3 for 18 going into the game. So, but at the same time, the rebounding in this contest, they got pounded on the boards. And the inside game, again, the 42-22 deficit from scoring points in the paint perspective. Those are all things that are troublesome for a basketball team that Indiana's supposed to be in regard to their bigs.
Yeah, and things aren't going to get any easier this coming Saturday as they travel to Lawrence, Kansas, take on the Jayhawks, who I believe are now a top 4, top 5 team in the country. Once again, what's it going to take? A second game in a row where you're playing a marquee opponent. Do you think that this team has the resiliency to be able to have a better performance in a real road environment this time around.
Well, and here's the other thing: the semester exam week. So now you've got something else to take your mind off of basketball here. That's really, really important because semester exams are critical to your basketball team. Not having somebody that's put on probation because of their grades or those kinds of things. So this is an important week for this ball club in that regard. So again, this is a big week for this program, not only from an academic perspective, but from a basketball perspective. And can they bounce back? They obviously did against Nebraska after losing to Rutgers, their first loss of the season in that regard. But this is a ball club right now that's probably going through a little growing process. And that's all part of it too. I mean, early on in the year, you're trying to find out what you've got, those kinds of things. And let's face facts here. Jalen Hood-Schifino has been out for 4 straight games. That has been a big problem for this basketball team. And it hasn't been a definitive problem in most games, but against a team like Arizona, I think it was a big problem. And I think this team has got to find a way to get him back on the court if it's at all possible. I know that Mike said in our pregame show on Saturday that he's getting better, but he still wasn't ready. And he's got another week now in between to get ready for this ball game against Kansas. And I think Indiana really needs this kid. I think he really fits what Indiana needs at this juncture.
Well, and it seemed to me, Don, that in the last couple of games that he hasn't played, Xavier Johnson has kind of gone back to his old ways that we saw last season, where it feels like he's almost trying to press a little bit. Now, he did some good things dishing the ball out. He had 11 assists, scored 11 points, but he was 3 of 13. And then you look at Trey Galloway, 2 of 5, didn't hit a 3-point shot. To me, this was the kind of game. This is an NCAA tournament game. These are the type of teams you're going to have to beat in order to advance, and it takes great guard play. So they didn't get a lot from – they've got to get better production from their guards. I would like to see this game, as you mentioned, with Jalen Hood-Schifino. But have you gotten the sense over these past couple games that without JHS on the floor, that Xavier is pushing too much or trying to take too much responsibility in some of these games, and that's led to maybe some of his recent struggles?
I think that tends to be the case for any point guard. If somebody's missing, they try to take over some kind of role in that regard as well, take that on their shoulders. And I think that is a bit of a problem. Trey Galloway, I think, has played really well in Jalen's absence, but it's just not the same fit, if you know what I'm saying. And I think Galloway comes off the bench. I think he is a tremendous competitor. I like everything I see out of Trey Galloway, and you just wish you could put 3 guards on the floor all the time and have that kind of cohesiveness. But without Hood-Schifino out there, now it's a different role for Trey Galloway, and now he's more of a point guard at times. And look, let's face it. This is all about growing your basketball team at this time of year.
Yeah.
And these kinds of games with Arizona, the game against Nebraska, a bounce back game that they had to have. Those are all learning experiences for your ball club. And at this point in the year, this is what it's all about. You're going to go through some rough spots. Indiana's in that position right now. And if they learn from it, this team will grow dramatically. If they don't learn from it, then we're going to have problems.
And Don, I want to bring up one other aspect from the game that a lot of people have talked about, and that is the sequence where there was the goaltending that wasn't called, and then right afterward you had the flop technical. That seemed to be a major turning point in the game for Indiana in terms of losing momentum as they had it. Arizona was able to get it back after that point, and that happened multiple times throughout the game. But that seemed to be the definitive moment where when you have momentum snatched out of you so suddenly and it's not really something that you did wrong, that can be a lot more difficult to bounce back from than other portions of the game.
Well, John, I'm shocked that you would bring up officiating.
I had to, Don.
No, the truth of the matter is I hate to say this because I think there have been a lot of great officials over the years in the Big Ten. And I think that officiating in general has just dropped off dramatically over the last 10 years. It's not as good as it used to be. They're elevating guys because more and more of the veteran type officials have gotten out of this business. The Terry Weimers, people like that. There were guys back in the day, Charlie Foudy and not Art White, but I'm trying to think of the other. Anyway, there have been really great officials through the years. And Indiana, or the Big Ten, I should say, used to get great officiating for the most part.
Yeah.
I don't see that anymore. I don't see that the Big Ten has any dominant official, period. Not one. And you could say, well, DJ Carsonson was in the NCAA. Well, they always take somebody from the Big Ten in the NCAA tournament. I'm not saying DJ's not a good official. I'm not saying that either. I'm simply saying that officiating in general has dropped off dramatically. And there are not as many people interested in becoming officials these days. And the ones that have gotten in there either haven't grown to the level of which we would like to see, or it's just harder to find great officials these days. And I think the Big Ten has been one of the Power 5 conferences that have been the worst at getting the best officials to do their games.
If only the Big Ten could sign like a multi-billion-dollar TV deal and maybe offers better pay and training to some of these officials, maybe they could get it figured out. I feel bad for them that they haven't been able to get that part figured out. It's a great point, Don, because, and I'm not going to harp on this too much, but you can make the argument that there have been 2 games decided by bad calls, and that was the Ohio State-Rutgers game earlier in the week with a shot that shouldn't have counted, and then the foul that really wasn't in the Purdue-Nebraska game at the end of the game. So it's been a problem. It's not just an Indiana thing. But no. One of the things I wanted to talk about too was, we talked about after a loss, we tend to harp on some of the negatives, and I know you said Mike Woodson didn't think Indiana played well from start to finish, but I have to give Indiana a lot of credit because you're down 20 early in that ball game. They fought back multiple times to get it back to 3 or 4. And I do understand Arizona always had an answer. They couldn't quite overcome that big deficit. But to me, to not have Jalen Hood-Schifino, to get down as bad as they did early and to continue to fight throughout the course of that game, that's where I take the positives and say, I think this team, like you said, Don, is still growing. They're still learning to mesh. They've got a ton of fight that they've got. And I think that that's a really big positive heading into this game and through the rest of the season when they're going to have a tough, 18 Big Ten games remaining. That's a very good thing in my mind heading into the rest of this season.
I agree. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt. Again, when you talk about November and December in college basketball, this is when you grow your team. This is when you learn about your team. What do we need to do differently? Who needs to become more of a factor for us? Can we develop the talent level, especially the young talented guys that you've got? All those things come into play. And here's the other thing that factors in: injuries. Yeah. They always play a part in your program. And a lot of people say, well, that's just an excuse. Well, it's not an excuse. It's a reality. It's just the truth of the matter. You find a guy like Jalen Hood-Schifino who comes in here and all of a sudden, man, we know this guy's special. I mean, you can see it, and you can see what he does out there on the floor and how he helps this basketball team. And now you miss him for 4 straight ball games. Well, all this plays into it. It's given Trey Galloway an opportunity to grow as a player himself. And we know how hard he plays and what he can do. So all these things come into play. And it's a part of what we do and part of what we want to see from your basketball program. Again, November and December, they're the growing time for your basketball program.
Well, Don, I know we need to get ready to let you go. What's coming up next for you? I heard that telephone in the background. Someone's calling for you, it sounds like. But
it's probably a robocall or something,
Exactly. Yeah, what's up next for you, Don?
Well, obviously, we've got the talk show tonight with Coach Woodson at 7:05 from Southern Stone Restaurant. We always like to give commercials when we have the opportunity. And then, of course, we've got Kansas coming up on Saturday. So it's going to be not a busy week, but a fun week. No question about it.
Well, thanks for taking the time to join our silly behinds this morning instead of Jim. We appreciate you listening to us and answering our questions instead of Jim. Hopefully it was worth your time this morning.
Oh, certainly it was worth my time. And tell Jim we hope that he is able to sleep it off.
Will do. Thanks, Don. The great Don Fischer joining us this morning, as always,
See
be
you
sure to
guys.
listen to Inside Indiana Basketball from Southern Stone Restaurant. And we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. Coming up next, we should have Dustin Dopirak with us. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Golfers, here's the deal.
I can check that off my bucket list.
What?
Interviewing Don Fischer.
There you go. Look at that. Awesome.
Never thought I would say a word to him other than, behind the scenes when Jim's on here.
I'm telling you, John, there's just I think I'm gonna try to do it next year again. Fit it into my schedule, but just go to Big Ten Media Days and just walk around and ask coaches and players questions. Any nerves you ever have, gone, ever again.
That right, just doing what we just did though. That
too.
Nerves I've ever had.
Yeah,
All right, I gotta step out for 2 seconds to get a music bed so I don't.
it's just gonna be me in here.
Break.
Oh boy. So everybody's got to put up with my ugly mug here on the in the background.
Hey, Dustin, I'll pull you in just a second. I'm kind of doing double duty this morning, so I'll be with you in just one second.
Double D. Jared says officiating is now awful because these new age officials want to be the star of the show. The best officials are the ones you can't name because they just do their job in the flow of the game. I mean, I agree with that. But I also think there's a lack of training that's happening at this level.
Morning,
Double
Dustin.
D.
Thanks for joining us this morning.
No problem.
Jim
Jim today? What's up?
says he might be coming on. He actually texted me saying he's in TSA right now or going through TSA.
Oh, he's coming back from Vegas. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. That
Yeah,
makes sense.
he took an extra day down there, I believe.
Where do you guys, where does media sit at Gainbridge Fieldhouse? I was there for the first time on Friday. Are you guys way up above, or is it somewhere that I just wasn't looking?
We're pretty high up. We're in section 107. There's like kind of a little media section there.
Okay.
So it's up there.
Gotcha.
It's a bit of a
Well, there was like a section, it looks like all the way at the top of Gainbridge, and I don't know what that is, but I saw it and I was like, certainly they don't have the media up above the 200s, because it used to be most of it was on the floor.
yeah. I mean, those are expensive seats. They
Right.
don't like us that much.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Dustin, if you all decided to talk Pacers, Dustin Schutte, you lead that conversation.
Well, I don't know. Did you get to watch the IU game, because the Pacers were playing at the same
Yeah,
time?
they were. I mean, I watched a little. Tony East is SI's Pacers guy, and so he's the other guy that's there all the time, and he's an IU grad. So I had it up. He and I were sort of keeping an eye on it.
10
Who
seconds.
else was there? Merritt. Mike Merritt was there too, and so we were all sort of checking in on it in between.
Here we go, guys.
Stop by Feast Market and Cellar today.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio. This segment brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty. Cheryl Sizemore, give her a call. If I had her number, I would say it out loud, so I apologize, Ms. Sizemore. I am not Mr. Jim Coyle. That's right. I am John, the producer, filling in for Jim this morning. Dustin Schutte with us, as always. And now it is time for our weekly Double D segment, Dustin Dopirak. I guess it's really Triple D, because you have Dustin, Dopirak.
True. Got a lot of D's involved here. Yes,
That's right.
correct.
Yeah, Dustin Dopirak with us from, he is with the Indy Star now, I believe, because he's covering the Pacers. Used to be with the Herald Times.
Which is
something like that.
owned by the same company as
Okay,
the
yeah.
Star. So they shifted me. I didn't leave Papers, but now I'm only the Pacers on the
That's
Star.
right.
And
Only.
no Bloomington overlap there.
Yeah, so you've been doing a lot of watching multiple games this past week, and you were keeping an eye on IU. You were obviously covering the Pacers.
Mhm.
What are some of your thoughts from this past weekend in basketball?
Wow. Okay. Where do I start? Mean, I'll get the Pacers out of the way just because obviously they're more forefront on my mind. But I mean, obviously, like I got to watch a little bit of IU on press row. Got my DirecTV stream account, so I can put anything on whenever I want. But obviously, you should keep your eye on the game, and I do. Bad loss for the Pacers on Saturday. Good win for them on Friday. They continue to be ahead of the curve. Obviously, the Saturday loss is bad because it's a wasted opportunity. If they had won that game, I think they'd be sitting in fourth in the East. And you should beat Brooklyn when it's basically not Brooklyn. I mean, they didn't play anybody. I mean, they all their top 7 scorers were out. Not just Durant and Irving and Ben Simmons, but Nick Claxton and Royce O'Neal and God, who else sat up? Seth Curry. I mean, basically like anybody that you can name, not name on Brooklyn. That's not fair. The top 7 guys were out. I mean, now obviously they had a couple of real players. Patty Mills. I went off for I think 20. Markieff Morris, played that game looking like he was, the old guy at the YMCA who showed up to beat up on the high school kids. The Daron Sharp is still 265 pounds of human, and he pushed everybody around in there. Cam Thomas went off for 33 points, and obviously you remember Cam from his LSU days is a heck of a scorer, and he really, really was. But you're not supposed to get beat that bad. 59-30 on the boards. I mean, a team should not. Nobody. If you're an NBA team, no one should beat you 59-30 on the boards. No one should get 29 offensive rebounds to your 7. That was nuts. I mean, they had, Brooklyn had almost as many offensive rebounds as the Pacers had total rebounds. That happens sometimes when the Pacers or when IU plays somebody plays a bye game in November. That's how rebound numbers look. Right. When you're playing somebody from or whatever. I mean, not even that. I mean, we're lower conferences than that.
Can I interject really quick because I want to get your take on this because it's very relevant to what you just said. The Pacers lost with a lot of the Nets' best players out. You go back a few days ago, the Pacers beat Golden State when the Pacers had a lot of their top players out. There are always like 5 or 6 games like this in the NBA that each team has where they're just out without for whatever reason. I always think those guys don't have tape. The guys that are actually playing in the game they're working their ass off because they're usually playing for a contract or a roster spot or something along those lines. Like, do you get the sense that I feel like I wish the Pacers could play without their best players for 6 to 7 games. Maybe that's a little too much, but 5 or 6 games throughout the course of the year, just because it mixes things up a little bit. It's always a weird phenomenon. The Pacers got to win over on the road at Golden State without some of their best players. And then a few days later, the Nets are without a ton of their best players and they get a win. Am I crazy to think that it's because 1, they don't have tape, and then 2, you just got guys that are, basically they're fearless. They've got nothing to lose out there.
Right. No, that's exactly how Brooklyn played. And I mean, it was different dynamics, obviously, when the Pacers were missing, they weren't missing a ton of their guys. I mean, it was Halliburton, Turner, and McConnell. What really made the story was that it's 2 point guards that are out. Right. And so Andrew Nembhard played 41 minutes and he played out of his mind. Now, Nembhard starts. It's not like, they brought Nembhard up from the G League. They did bring Trevelyan Queen up for a G League, and he had to handle 11 or I think 6 minutes in that game. It was 11 minutes the night before. I mean, the one thing about it was, Golden State, if they really wanted to, they had tape from the night before because they had a similar situation. They didn't have Turner played in that game, but Halliburton and McConnell were both out. So it was the second night of a back-to-back in which Nembhard played crazy minutes. And the thing about Nembhard was he played at the end of 36 against Portland, he looked pretty gassed. At the end of 41 against Golden State, and obviously this is how you feel when you're scoring 31 and have 13 assists, he could play another one. He looked fine, and he was just dazzling. He was absolutely spectacular. But it's not like, they'd never seen Andrew Nembhard. The Nets, as far as Brooklyn was concerned, you hadn't seen a whole lot of Cam Thomas. You hadn't seen a whole lot of Daron Sharp. You had to dig to find minutes for those guys. Obviously Markieff Morris, you've seen Patty Mills. You have, decades, a decade now of national and international play to know what Patty Mills is all about. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely that dynamic of, feeling like you've got to prove something. Again, you're fighting for minutes of contract. I mean, it is like a livelihood game for you. And so, like they absolutely get up. And, the issue is, I mean, the Pacers were aware of this, and we asked them afterwards, because basically from Carlisle on down, it was like tonight was an effort problem. Tonight was an effort issue. The ball goes up, it's a 50-50 shot. Now, Brooklyn's got, the guys they put out there on the front court, Brooklyn has more mass. Even the guys that they played have more mass than the Pacers. And that is an issue the Pacers have, is not enough mass. And like, I get, they play up and down. They've got guys who can run. You've got to have athletic bigs, but you got to have some mass in there. And Turner's the only guy that has any. Jalen Smith, and I think Jalen Smith and Isaiah Jackson are way more than it says they do on their bio. I don't think Jackson's only 205, and I don't think Smith's only 215, but they're not a lot bigger. And Sharp and Markieff Morris have some muscle. Maxine says hi to everybody. But anyway, it's an issue that they have. But yeah, no, I mean, every once in a while, it is a dynamic changer. And the guys just clearly weren't ready for that. And it was second night of back for the Pacers too. And they just said they just did, even though they were fully aware of what they were dealing with, that hey, just because Durant and Irving aren't playing, like you're going to play some hungry dudes who want to beat the crap out of you, and want to score 40, and because they want to put some big numbers so they can say, you need to keep me because I can score 33 against the Pacers. And that's where they were. And they just didn't really ever find it. Didn't have good rotations. We're getting killed on the glass. It happens. And again, when it's the NBA, it's 1 of 82, where right. It's not as big, nasty of a sign. They get to play again tonight, and shake it off and act like it never happened. But still, there were some bad signs there, and yeah. But to your point, like it is a much different dynamic in those games, and sometimes the team that doesn't have anybody is the one that has the advantage.
Switching gears now, obviously the Indiana Hoosiers played out in Las Vegas this past weekend, took on the Arizona Wildcats in the clash. Things did not necessarily go the way that Indiana had hoped. Arizona was really able to will their way to win with their fast offense, and Indiana's defense wasn't really able to handle it, especially down the stretch. And they got off to a rough start as well. But Dustin, I know you were keeping your eye on that as well. What are your thoughts on the Hoosiers right now?
I mean, obviously I was keeping my eye on it, and I've seen the box score. And so, I mean, I think, my big picture take is Arizona's really good. And, I think and it sounded like an obvious thing to say, I want to say maybe 2 weeks prior to Carolina. I think, Arizona, I think Maui, maybe it was the second night of Maui. Around that time, I said, it seems pretty clear at this point that like Arizona is going to be the toughest of those three. And North Carolina might be the easiest. And I think that's playing out as is. I mean, I think that the Arizona Maxine got a lot of things.
She disagrees. She disagrees.
She's like, wait a minute, I have a counterpoint. No, I mean, I think it's very clear at this point that Arizona is the second most talented of those teams, or the most talented of those teams. I think, I mean, Kansas is probably close, but I mean, Arizona's got size, they've got talent. It's still, I think, a shocker they lost to Utah. That's, I think, one of the more surprising results of this season so far. And I think it's obviously going to be an anomaly. And I think when you look back at this one, you're going to say, well, of course they lost to Arizona. Like Arizona's really, really good. I mean, and you're obviously seeing Carolina fade. So I think just the issue is they went and beat a team that's better than them. And I think obviously you're getting more of a sense, okay, where does this team really belong? Where does it really belong? And I think we spent a lot of offseason. I think this is where it is. I mean, I think it's a top 15 team. Maybe it's a top 10 team, but Arizona's probably going to be a top 5 team. When it's all said and done. Obviously, when you lose a game in November, everything's skewed at this point. But the team that wins Maui is usually pretty good. And Arizona's really good. I mean, they've got, big league size, big league skill, can play fast, and can defend you. I mean, I think, obviously, I mean, Trace has been so good. And when you hold Trace to 11 on, what did he shoot? Like not a particularly good number. Was it like 4 for 14 somewhere on those lines? Not a lot of teams can do that. And, like I imagine some of that's just everything sort of I read or saw or pieced together, suggested to me that these guys, they just did a really good job of defending him. They put a couple of bodies on him, and nobody was able to really take the pressure off. 4 of 10, and that's not a terrible number by any means, but that just tells you he's not really getting out and get to do what he wants. I mean, he's been passing the ball extremely well, only had 1 assist. They did a really good job of, taking him out of what he wanted to do, and making it so that there wasn't, he didn't have passing lanes. They figured out that he can't pass the ball out of a double team. So you got to double him, and you've got to do a good job of taking away his lanes and making sure you're on whoever he throws the ball to. And they obviously did a pretty good job on that. Again, I didn't see the whole thing. I didn't do a full sort of film breakdown here. But that stands out when you look at when you look at the numbers. When you saw like what I did see. Certainly it hurts Indiana. They didn't have Jalen Hood-Schifino again. I mean, they're certainly a different team without him. I mean, I think has he been as good as advertised? I don't know, but he's really good. I don't know that we should still be talking, one and done NBA guy with him. But he is definitely a starter quality player in the Big Ten. And as a freshman, that's a big deal. So I think that's, it's a big loss. They haven't been able to play the same without him. And a lot of those other guys have to be good have to be really good when he's not playing. I mean, you need Bates and Galloway and Geronimo and Renew. You need more from all of them. And I think, Bates was really good. I don't know that Galloway's numbers were really good. And you're seeing, Reno and Geronimo did not have a particularly good game from numbers wise. And I think I'm sort of surprised to see sort of some back steps from those guys, but it happens. They're not going to be dominant all the time. Good. Obviously, I think that Race had a good game, certainly after, I think a rough night against Rutgers, if I wasn't mistaken. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it's just, they just didn't have it all together. And, some things just didn't work out for those guys. I'm not the only one on the show right now, am I?
Not sure what just happened. I believe
I was on the show by myself for a second. I was like, what do I do?
I saw Dustin fall out, and then all of a sudden my connection rebooted. I'm just like, what is going on here right now?
Well,
I was like the stream shut down, and that we were just toast. We're back.
No, we wanted to put Dustin on the spot. We wanted to see if he could host his own show and see how he would handle the pressure situation.
No, based on how I handled that. But anybody who was watching the YouTube feed got really close up view.
That was
it
made me lose my train of thought because I saw when Dustin fell out, I was like, okay, I've got my next question ready, and then I fell out, and I'm like, fan here for a second.
Well, I'll get back to the good stuff here, and not hopefully leave Dustin stranded this time. So one of the things I wanted to touch on was your colleague at the Indy Star, Zach Osterman, had an interesting take. Some people loved it. Some people did not love it. I have not read it thoroughly. I kind of skimmed it. It seemed like, basically something along the lines of Indiana might have lost, but I would rather be in Indiana's position than I would be Arizona's right now. And while that seems strange after a 14-point loss, I think what he was alluding to is this is who Arizona is. This is who they're going to be, and they're playing really well in December. Indiana, because they don't have Jalen Hood-Schifino, they're still they've got some younger pieces that they're trying to mix in here. It's going to be we don't know the ceiling basically of this team. They can continue to improve, and you want to be playing your best basketball in March, not in December. I don't know that I want to say that I think I'd still rather be in Arizona's position, but I can certainly understand the point of view of this team still has a long way to go. I don't think we've seen Indiana play its best basketball yet. We'll see what they can do when Jalen Hood-Schifino returns. But basically, because you lose to Arizona by 14 points on a neutral site game, it's not the end of the world. You still got some really good players. You were missing one of your key guys. Let's not hit the panic button just yet because this team is 7-2 or 8-2, whatever the record is right now.
Yeah. That's I feel like I'm more. I probably agree with like 60% of what Zach says, and that's about a level where I'm usually at with him. Yeah. I mean, I think the core point for Indiana's purposes is that this team can get better. And I absolutely agree with that. And, I said this, just early in the year, like, as we're looking at schedules and whatever, like they don't even have, I was just looking at that Carolina, Arizona, Kansas stretch. I'm like, they don't have to win any of them,
right.
Like they can, I mean, it's important that they compete. It's important that they get the experience of playing at that, level. But like, if they lose out 0-3, that's not a reason to be terrified. And I think, I've just sort of tried to, I don't want to say temper expectations for this group. I think they're going to be really good, but I just I just don't look at them and see national championship. I don't look at them and see Final Four. And now anything, it's a single elimination tournament, matchups, anything. We've seen more than one team that I didn't think was a Final Four team get to the Final Four. It happens. Usually there's at least one team a year that you're like, well, I wouldn't have thought that. When this tournament, when this bracket came out, much less, a month before the bracket came out. So, obviously they can catch the right breaks. They can get there, not thinking they're a Final Four team right now doesn't mean that they won't be. But I didn't think this team had that ceiling. I certainly didn't look at this team and see the same things I thought in 2013, and certainly they didn't make it. They were a 1 seed and if they play that tournament in February, they probably win it. And so, that team had all the pieces, had the experience, had been close, not close the year before, but, basically had been really competitive the year before, had beaten obviously the Kentucky team that ended up winning it and gave them, a game in Atlanta in the Sweet 16. This group obviously didn't have nearly that experience. It's got a lot of, pretty raw talent, but you hadn't seen it perform the way that 11-12 team did, going into 12-13. You certainly didn't see the same stuff, from this group. So, I've sort of looked at this and like, where do you pin these guys around? I say around Sweet 16, around top 15 team in the country. And I haven't seen anything that dissuades me from believing that they're going to be that. And I think they can get better in certain areas. And again, like I haven't, dissected them the same way that I would if I was still on the beat. But they've got a lot of good pieces and they're going to get better. And again, I mean, now the thing about Jalen Hood-Schifino coming back, you have to remember, this is a young kid who's having a back injury, and I cannot imagine he's had a back injury before.
Right.
And that's going to be something, for him to deal with. I mean, I think those things are tricky. And you might be cruising along just fine for a while, and then one day you wake up and you can't get out of bed. Stuff like that happens as far as that's concerned. So you don't know how it's going to react, not just short term, but long term. Imagine he's going to get on the floor probably in the not too distant future. Wouldn't be shocked to see him against Kansas. But he could play a couple games, he could go a couple weeks, and it could, jump up and bite him one morning. You don't know. And he's, I'm sure, just getting, just finding out what it takes once you've, got a back injury, what you have to do to keep it calm, basically. So, it can fire up on him on some random day in February. You don't know. And so that's going to be an issue going forward. But, certainly they'll be better when he's back on the floor. And, a lot of these other guys can make improvements. I mean, I think Malik Renew is hitting a bit of a wall, and not a wall. I mean, a wall is probably a little wrong term. He's finding out that, like, hey, some people can defend you. Some people are going to figure out how to guard you. And some people are going to figure out how to make it hard. It wasn't very hard for you early. Now it is. And now you got to respond. Geronimo, the same. I think you're starting to see Tamar Bates really pick up his trajectory. And so it's okay. Like, how steady is that going to be? I mean, and, I really think he can be good. I really do. And, they've talked so much about him in the offseason, the improvements he was making. If he keeps making them, Maxine did something. I don't know what.
It's perfect timing because we can go ahead and take our next break. You want to go check out what's going on?
Yeah. Hold on.
All right, here's what we're going to – Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Stars with us. We're going to go ahead and take our next break. It was in Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Barber Pop Real Estate Services, If you're down in the southern Indiana, Louisville area, be sure to reach out to Barber Pop Real Estate Services. We'll be right back right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Andy Moore Honda.
All right. I'm going to do it last time and hop out for a second, and I'll be right back.
Some breaking news here. Texas men's basketball coach Chris Beard has been arrested for third-degree felony assault on a family member, impeding breath circulation. That's from ESPN's, it's from Dana O'Neill at The Athletic. He gets us some comments here, Robert. The only fans panicking are the ones that bought all the preseason hype. I mean, that's probably a fair point.
There was definitely overhype for this season.
Well,
not that it wasn't justified. It's just
this is what happens almost every year, and it's not specific to Indiana. It's specific to the Big Ten, in that when a team has a lot of guys coming back, they are pegged as the best team in the Big Ten, because usually you'll see teams like Michigan, Michigan State, Illinois, other teams will lose a lot. And suddenly, because all those teams lost a lot, Indiana was jumped into that, they're going to be one of the best 2 teams in the Big Ten. Well, that's not necessarily the case, especially the way freshmen come in now and are ready to play and are ready to get after it. The transfer portal, all that stuff makes a huge difference. So to me, it's not just – I don't think Indiana's bad. I just think other teams are also just as good. Like, it's a different era. So having that experience doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be good.
Do we want to touch on the Mike Leach situation at all? I know we should probably bring it up, right?
You could probably mention that. Did you hear what I said about Chris Beard?
Yeah, the arrest or something.
What?
That just broke.
Chris Beard was arrested on 3rd-degree felony assault on a family member. That was from Dana O'Neill of The Athletic.
43 minutes ago on 3.
Jesus.
And then ESPN posted something 7 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. I would, that if you want to mention those 2 things, but I'm not going to talk about either one because I don't. I don't know anything.
Yeah, I think that's. Wow. Arrested at 418. I'm just seeing this 3rd-degree felony. I mean, you could just mention Beard because I don't think we know anything, and
right.
I think we could just say, obviously, best of luck. I mean, I haven't seen anything. Not best of luck. I mean, that sounds dismissive, but I mean, I think everybody, regardless of what anyone's opinion is of Michael Leach, I think everyone wants to see him get through this. So I think, obviously, it's sad, it's terrifying, it's scary. And I mean, I'm not seeing anything new here.
10 seconds.
Twitter. There's no last night. It was scary.
Order online today at thefreshfork.com. Fresh Fork is a proud partner of WOW Network. This segment is brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio. This segment brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar. A couple of breaking news moments that we were just talking about in the break. One of them actually broke last night, but the one that broke what appears to be just a few minutes ago was current Texas head basketball coach Chris Beard, who wants to be thought a candidate for Indiana's most recent head coaching opening before Mike Woodson was hired, was arrested Monday morning on a felony domestic violence charge. Any thoughts from you two about? I mean, obviously we know nothing about the situation.
Right. Yeah,
just reacting to what we're seeing.
It's probably important to say that it was felony assault on a family member.
Okay.
So I think obviously, I mean, this just slight things as far as, and I don't know if it is this or not. When we think domestic, obviously we think spouse.
Right.
And so it could be, and it's never good when you're arrested for, assaulting a family member. Obviously it's different, I guess in theory, if you punch your brother in the face for some reason, that's assaulting a family member. And that's obviously much, much different than domestic violence. So we don't know what this is. Obviously, the specifics of it, obviously it's not good. Regardless, it's not a good thing for that to be the case. I mean, and again, you don't know specifics. You don't know what they have, what they don't have, evidence, who was somebody there, no idea, but obviously it's just not a good thing.
Yep.
And then the other news as of note from last night, it was reported that Mississippi State head football coach Mike Leach was rushed to the hospital, actually helicoptered in to the hospital, and is believed to be in critical condition after suffering an undisclosed medical emergency. So again, another situation where not a lot of things are being said about the situation, but a lot of people have been offering up prayers and thoughts just because, I mean, we don't really know what the outcome of this could be. And then there was a few people who even mentioned that he needs a miracle to get out of the situation alive.
Yeah, no, I think everybody that's sort of reporting on it from the SEC, whether it's that we are there are some Indiana media connections to Mississippi State. Hugh Kellenberger, I think sort of created that pipeline basically when he left the Herald Times to go down to the Clarion Ledger, and I think they've had some other people in Mississippi. So I think 2 IU grads are down there. Gracie Barr and Stefan Krajnik are down there reporting and working for outlets down there. So I've seen some of their reporting and whatnot, and just everything that I've seen suggests this is scary. And I don't know, obviously don't know specifics, but whatever, doctors are really having to fight for it. But I guess he was just at there was some kind of party that, on, Christmas party or whatever the night before. And by all accounts, he was in really good spirits and everything was going really good. And so whatever happened was sudden and serious. And so that's, I think what I think we can piece together about this so far. But obviously, Leach has been just a heck of a character in college football, and, and just, he's just one of the most entertaining quotes in world history, to be honest. The guy's just hilarious.
Last night,
not everybody loves the guy all the time, and you saw his transfer running back said I'm leaving because Mike doesn't think it's tough, and he's happy to see me go. But I like, obviously the guy's just just again a heck of a character. College football would certainly be less, and the world would be less without him. So obviously best of luck, thoughts and prayers to everybody involved, and to his doctors to do whatever they can to keep him going. So I think obviously everybody has the best of thoughts for him as he's fighting this.
Yeah, last night I couldn't help but go back and revisit his rant back when he was with Texas Tech about Baylor. And apparently, I think it's the game after they had just beaten Baylor, but it's the fact that they said they weren't prepared, or they I can't remember what the phrase was, but there was many expletives in that rant if you've seen it before. But it's just one of those all-time favorite things that I like to go back and listen to from Mike Leach, as are several others. Whether it's his thoughts on marriage, if you've seen that one before when he was in Washington State, that one's a classic. Obviously, fat little girlfriends. That's the one that everybody always goes back to as well. So, Mike Leach is, like you said, Dustin, a character. He has many a quote that people will continue to, say regardless of what the outcome of this is. So, and then
mascot fights was one of my favorites.
That was a good one.
So serious. He had thought about that for, you knew he'd put real thought into it before at some point in time. When he was asked about it, he was like, I have very much thoughts on this, what, who would win this mythical matchup. And it's hilarious. Just and he doesn't you ask that question and you think any coach would be like, I have other things to do with my life. Are you serious?
Right.
Question Mike knows nope, wait a minute. Let me think about this. Let me take a moment. Strongly consider who I think would win if all the Pac-12 mascots, their actual physical incarnations, fought each other. You're only Mike Leach.
He would definitely. I don't think the Pac-12 has any pirates, but if he was ever in that debate, whenever he was,
that's
pirate was in contention with that, he would definitely take
absolutely.
Pirates.
Yeah, no, for sure. The pirate thing is still hilarious. His whole deal with Pirates is great.
One other note: Indiana men's soccer playing in the College Cup final tonight. We haven't mentioned that today. This is, I believe, they set a record. I know they're in their 50th season, but they set a record for most appearances in the College Cup. I don't know. They may have said it before this year, but they may have continued it on this season. I wish I had the number in front of me. I think it's somewhere around 22 or 23, but Todd Yeagley obviously has this program continuing to roll, searching for that 9th star. They haven't won a national title since 2012, so it's been 10 years. They've had a couple of opportunities in the past several seasons where I believe they've either lost in the College Cup semifinals or lost in the final. So they're trying to just take that next step forward and put another star on that crest that they have on their jersey. But I know not everybody here is fond of soccer talk, but I did have to mention that.
No, it's important. It's an important program at IU. It's critical. It is probably, fourth at worst. You know, at any given time it's a top 5 sport, but really, they got more titles in soccer than they have in anything but, in anything. I'm not sure.
Maybe swimming and diving.
How men's swimming does championships. Swimming, they probably have more from the heyday in the 70s when they had Spitz and all those guys. But yeah, I mean, like in terms of just raw success, it's probably the second best program, in Indy at IU with men's basketball being third on that list. And they're like what Todd has done to and they were okay in between, but Todd picking up where his dad left off is just it's been amazing to watch just how consistently successful they've been. They don't have bad seasons. I mean, even when they're bad, they're going out in the second or third round of the tournament or whatever, and they're getting close to the cup. And obviously, they I think it was 2 years ago they lost to Marshall. And
that's right.
21 or no,
the COVID years. They played
21
in the spring. They played in the spring.
It was the COVID the following spring when they had to move the season back. So they've been close, and obviously this is a big one. Like, yes, Robert Swartz, soccer has been IU's identity for a long time, my man. Long time. It's been no seriously. I mean, let's no joke. Like swimming and soccer are as good. Like men's basketball is a big deal. Let's not, certainly Indiana believes in Indiana. But men's soccer is a big deal at IU. It is a really, really big deal at IU, and IU soccer fans really believe in it. I mean, they get people to show up for that. I've never been a soccer guy, but IU soccer is the real thing, and that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that.
Is this a real possibility? If true, this would be the end of Chris Beard's career. I think that's a bit of maybe
that's
not
getting out ahead of your
career,
skis.
But
that's getting out ahead of your skis. I mean, like, you don't know, like, if it's really bad. If it comes down to that family member really is wife, and it's for whatever reason, like, details come out and you're like, well, that's worse than we thought. That seems like it should be worse than a 3rd-degree felony. I mean, you never know. Like that, we're way out ahead of our skis talking about that. Again, there's all kinds of things. Like I mean, it does strike me just as someone who watches a lot of Law and Order, in terms of my legal expertise. I mean that's a very specific charge. It's if it's not domestic violence, if it's specifically assault against a family member, that strikes me as okay. Like that leads me to believe not spouse. And so you would think he would just say domestic violence if it were, but obviously that could not be the case. It could really be that. So obviously if it's, I have no idea Chris's family situation at all. I don't know if he has kids. If it's kids, that's a different issue,
right?
And so it's just like we don't have even the beginnings of an understanding of it, if that's something that can be, like the realm of possibility. To me, the range of potential possibilities on what this could be seems to go pretty far for me right now, and so then therefore the range of punishments is also pretty wide. So we don't know anything, and I think making a point of saying we don't know anything, and I haven't even, all I saw was just the tweets because John saw it. I mean, Rudy says domestic violence doesn't matter if it happens to a spouse or family member. Yes, but yes, that's what the word means. But obviously, we think about hitting your spouse a lot different than we think about hitting other members of your family. Let's be real. Like, if it's a guy versus another guy, we look at it very differently than it's a guy hitting a woman. I think that's pretty clear. If it's a guy hitting, again, like a family member that is of his same, relative size, we think of it differently as we think of it than if we imagine him hitting, a younger member of the family or kids or something like it. There's obviously we as a society think of it as very different. There's a lot of range of possibilities as far as family is concerned there. So, in terms of how it gets viewed. And so, so bottom line, like if it's the worst of possible outcomes, if it's the worst way that you can imagine that being, then yeah, it can end his career.
Right.
But we have no idea yet what that means. So
since we don't know anything, I'm going to switch topics here.
Good idea. Let's stop before we say something defamatory. I think we're working really hard not to say anything defamatory.
Exactly. Into into more fun topic here. Pacers have 2 upcoming home games. Will you be or will you not be participating in Star Wars night? I believe that's Wednesday against the Knicks.
Sadly, no. No, I think I always liked Star Wars. My brother was way more into it though. Like I'm not a big sci-fi guy, you know.
Right.
I'm not either. I have not like kept up with everything since. Like I've seen the main 3. I saw the first prequel in theaters when I was I had to be 19, something like that. I don't know, like maybe younger than that, when The Phantom Menace came out. But I haven't seen anything since. Like, you know, if it's on, you know, if one of them is on TNT or whatever, I might watch 10 minutes, but like I haven't seen any of that in theaters or anything like that. So like I'm not gonna go dress up. But I remember because like before they had the prequels, they actually brought back the originals and played them in theaters. And you guys might not even be old enough to remember that, because I'm old. But they did that. Like that was like a movie thing where it's like I want to say I was maybe 16, somewhere in that range, maybe 15. They, you know, just brought back 1, 2, you know, Star Wars and Empire and Return of the Jedi. I brought back all 3. And I remember my brother came to them, you know, went to, we both went to this because it was like, you know, in our suburb or whatever, we all, you know, usually went to the same movie theater for this stuff. And my brother showed up completely dressed up as Yoda, like robe, top to bottom, everything, lightsaber, whole bit. And so, you know, like he would show up for this and he would actually get dressed up and really do it. That's not my deal, but it'll be fun to watch anyway. I'll be entertained. Utah just had a Star Wars night. Yes, Star Wars night obviously is everywhere. What was wild was you know, like they have like a dance routine. Like I think it was members of the jazz dance team were dressed up as Darth Vader, and stormtroopers, and that was pretty wild. And then a whole bunch of like Jedi guys dressed as Jedis were breakdancing. It was a lot. It was a lot to process, a lot to take in. So I don't know if the Pacers like that. I will say this: the gauntlet has been thrown, Pacers. You know, whoever was on that road trip to Utah, like that is the bar that you have to meet. Best of luck.
Well, other than Star Wars night, Dustin, what is up next for you?
So it's Heat tonight and shoot around in 75 minutes. Victor Oladipo, Heat shoot around. So Victor Oladipo is going to be back tonight. So that's going to be interesting. I watched a lot of just to catch up because I just hadn't really thought about Vic in a while. Watched the Old Man and the 3 podcast he did with JJ Redick in October. I want to say I think it dropped in October, maybe it was August. I don't know, but one way or another, like just to get back in the headspace of where Vic must be, and you just really forget, man, how much he went through, and just you know. The guy has been hardened by life, I think. You know, I mean, if you know, obviously I got to watch Vic when you know, he was at IU and just had the whole world in front of him, and just the boundless talent, not just as a basketball player but in life. And he still has all that, but man, has he been through a lot. You know, I mean, like he was just detailing just what it was like going through that injury and the bad breaks he got, and having you know, not having the surgery go correctly the first time. You know, just saying like it's hard to sit down in a car. It's hard to get out of, you know, it was hard to get out of bed. He's like, I still don't want to drive half an hour, you know, like more than 30 minutes because like just, you know, keeping my knee bent for that long is miserable. You know, it's still not fun now. And it's better, but like, you know, like especially for a while, like it was just such a task to think about it, and sort of like a, you know, a hurdle in his mind to just think about driving for more than half an hour. And you're like, man, like, you know, when I was going to Bloomington, I was driving in 2 hours every day. You know, like that sounded like misery to Vic. So it's gonna be interesting to see what he's going to be like when he talks about just returning. Obviously, I think he's got some bitterness for the Pacers organization, honestly, and he doesn't like to talk about it, and he'll probably dodge that. But you know, obviously, to see how his face contorts when he's asked about it, I think is going to be sort of interesting. But yeah, so it's gonna be intriguing. I'm interested to see if he's going to remember me. I don't know. We'll see. I'll be surprised, but we'll see. So in an hour and 15 minutes, be over at Gamebridge and, you know, see what Vic has to say.
Well, Dustin, thanks as always for joining us. I know
I know I'm not Jim Coyle, but I appreciate you putting up with me this morning. Hopefully it's been worth your time. I said the same thing to Don Fischer earlier.
It is certainly no more difficult to deal with you than Jim.
We appreciate it.
Hope you
As
listen to
always, good luck with everything you do on a daily basis. We will talk to you next week, my friend.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, guys.
We'll be right back. Coming up next, and Dustin, I'm going to ask you to stick around just for a couple of minutes during the break. But when we come back from this, we're going to replay the ISB postgame show, Indiana basketball after the game, or actually maybe we won't. It looks like Mr. Jim Coyle may be joining us in person. I had one thing in mind. Maybe we're not doing it after all. See, this is radio on the fly because now our host is back. So let's go ahead and get to break. We're going to bring Jim with us when he's ready. So, yeah, you're listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Metalworks Brewing Company. We'll be right back right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home,
There's something
Jim,
you
if you want me to bring you in, just wave because I know you. Okay. Good morning.
What's up?
It's at the slot machines, baby.
Look at that.
Nice.
All right. So before you showed up, my plan was to replay the post game show here. But if you're going to be here, I'm not going to.
How about
do that,
this?
obviously.
We can do this.
Just spin around. I like it. This is amazing. Amazing content. Do you need me now, John?
Well, what I was going to say before Jim showed up was that wait
I
until I
can't
make
stay
sure this
until
is
the
good to
end.
go. And
I can't
and
stay
then
until the
we're good to
end.
go.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah, you sound just fine. Can you hear us?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm just saying I cannot stay until the end.
Well, here, the way this will work out perfectly, then just do. Let me see how long this is. It's about 25 minutes. Hold on. Trying to do math in my head. If you just want to do like a 5-ish minute segment with Dustin here, if Dustin's fine with it, and then go to break again, and then I can finish up the show with the post game show from from Saturday. You can do that if you want.
Okay.
Okay. Give me 1 second. I got to go find some music, so I'm going to back out.
How about that picture, man? That was cool as crap, wasn't it? When Don stuck his head in between Pat and Dean.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we talked about that this morning.
Pretty cool.
Pretty good.
Did anybody talk about the fact that that's, to my knowledge, the only time?
John brought it up. Yep, we did. We hit on that. We got a rolling this morning.
All right, I'm back. Yeah, 2 shows in a row without Mr. Coyle.
What view do you want? You like the slots or?
I like the slots, as long as they're not too noisy.
See the mountains and airplanes?
I can see the airplanes. I don't see the mountains.
Yeah,
like
you
a
can't
fairly
see the
busy
mountains
morning
because
there,
of the. Are you kidding me? Longest line I've ever seen in my life. I got dropped off, came into the airport, walked all the way up to where the gates were, and then had to go all the way down to where the gates were, and then caught the line and basically turned around and walked right back outside.
All right, here we go, guys. Remember, just do about 8 minutes or so here, and I'll pop right back in. All right, here we go.
Hospitality restaurants. Come taste what Dr. Hops is brewing. Metalworks Brewing Company. Bring your passion and your thirst.
This segment is brought to you by BB's Market in Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Oh, hello, everybody. Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you from, I'm in Las Vegas still. Heading back here at the airport and waiting to get on my flight back to Indianapolis. Boy, has it been a long weekend.
But it's probably been a fun weekend, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It wasn't fun. It was definitely fun. But boy, you talk about getting your steps in.
That's one thing I heard from a lot of people out there, a lot of Hoosier fans out in Vegas, is it's like going to Disney World because you have to constantly be walking. That's what I've been told.
It's an adult theme Disney World. It's exactly what I heard someone call it that last night. It's exactly what it is. Adult themed Disney park. But yeah, you're gonna walk because you're either walking or taking a cab or an Uber someplace.
Right.
But just the walking is. And I've been out here a ton, but everything is within the casinos. They try to keep you in there, so they put everything you need, but that means it's a spread out, big footprint. But yeah, very cool. Cool seeing the game in the Grand Garden Arena. Great atmosphere, man. What an electric atmosphere! I know you guys have already heard that and talked about that probably, but the Indiana crowd. Very surprising. I don't know how they get their hands on all those tickets.
Right.
I'm pretty sure the allotment was 6,300 each way, and somehow Indiana fans got their hands on at least 85% of the tickets. It reminded me of the Outback Bowl a couple of years ago. I remember when I was down there, staying in the same hotel where most of the IU fans were, and I'm thinking, wow, Indiana football fans have shown out. Then we got to the stadium, and I was like, oh, 80% orange.
Right. Well, that was one of the things at one time during the broadcast was Gus Johnson made the comment that it was basically like a home game for Indiana. And
absolutely.
I know the end result wasn't what obviously a lot of Indiana fans wanted. But at the same time, it was really cool to see that kind of support and that sort of travel from the Indiana side on national television. That I thought that was really cool. So,
it is. It's very important. It's also important. Yeah, it's important for future environments, whether it's NCAA tournament or other tournaments. People want Indiana. Their Indiana is going to be a wanted product. Which they've never stopped being a wanted product, but they dropped down a little bit. People don't care if they win or lose. Not the fans, but man, Indiana is one of the top five drawing schools in the country still, right now, without question.
One of the things we talked about was this was like an NCAA tournament game for Indiana because of the way the tempo that Arizona plays with. The way they move up and down the court, they're going to shoot as many shots as they possibly can. I think we found out, if we didn't know in the Rutgers game, I think we found out on Saturday just how important it's going to be to have Jalen Hood-Schifino on the floor because, once again, Xavier Johnson, he did dish out 11 of his assists, but he was 3 of 13 from the field, finished with 11 points. He's just a different player when JHS is not on the floor. So in a game where you had to have good guard play, I thought he pressed a little bit too much. He did dish the ball out pretty well throughout the course of that game, but I think we found out just how important Jalen Hood-Schifino is to this team, especially the backcourt.
Beyond question. I mean, it was already showing very much so, but a game like this, first of all, Arizona they're going to be a top 4 seed.
Yeah.
I don't see any way possible that is not going to happen. They're just too damn good. They're too big. They're too long. They have good guard play. And I don't want to get off of this tangent because I know a lot of people already have. I did it with soccer. It does piss me off. Excuse me. It does piss me off that 9 of their players are not from the United States. There's a reason over in Germany where Jordan Hulls was playing, all those leagues, those professional leagues, they only allow 2 Americans per roster. There's a reason for that. There is a reason for that. But with the money in today's games, I don't know that anything's ever going to be changed in that regard. But it is aggravating to me for American schools. This is not they're not playing an American university. I mean, that was in no way like playing an American university. That was like playing a European All-Star team. And I'm not complaining because Indiana lost. Indiana lost because they weren't as good, period. Utah beat the pants off of Arizona. But Indiana was without Jalen Hachipino. I'd like to see what would have been like had they had him.
Right.
Not saying they could have or would have beat him, but it would have been a different game. And they absolutely could have beat him with Jalen Hachipino. But Arizona is really good. However they compile. I was wondering how Arizona got so good so fast. Oh, Tommy Lloyd's only been there. Is this the second season?
Second season, yep.
Yeah. I was like, wait a minute. You guys are coming off a bunch of NCAA crap. And so there's that. But, good time. Good experience for Indiana. When the NCAA tournament comes around, that environment, playing a team like that, crappy officiating, you don't have to deal with all of it. And they got a good taste of every bit of that.
Yep, and that's
John, let's go ahead and take a break so we can let you go.
Yep, we can go ahead and take that break.
Well, brother, I appreciate it. It's good seeing you. Tell Howie there, you find me a nice little quiet spot in this Las Vegas airport. I'm glad to sit down there, brother. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radios. I'm coming to you from Las Vegas, of course. Brought to you by our good friends from Phoebe's Market. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
All right, Dustin, thanks for everything this morning.
No problem. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Jim, you want me to go ahead and run the post-game show here during this last part? So you can just get on your airplane?
You might as well because they're boarding.
Okay. Sounds good.
But
Safe
you know
travels.
what? Hey, you know what?
What?
You need to clip from another show me saying I'll see you on the radio or something, because this would be the only show that I've ever said that.
Oh, well, don't worry. I've got a plan. You're fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay. I trust you.
All right. I'll see you.
All right, buddy. Thanks.
All right, guys. We'll be back from break in a couple minutes. So for those of you who haven't seen this yesterday Saturday's post-game show, you're going to get a chance to do that here. At no extra charge to you. All right, make sure we get set up here so I can get my other stuff rolling while I'm playing this for you guys. All right. Let's we're gonna do a little background shifting as well so we don't have that double red. Here we go. Much better. I'm also going to get rid of the BB's Market, since that's already in there. All right. Thanks for listening this morning, guys. I know it's been 2 days without our buddy Jimbo. I'm glad you still tune in when Dustin and I are filling in. I'm also going to go ahead and turn off. Actually, I'll wait until we get into this before I do that. Does Chris Beard get fired? I don't know. If those allegations are true, we'll see. I'm going to bring us back in.
Southern Stone Restaurant, located at the corner of Patterson and Rogers in Bloomington, offers a variety of freshly made fare, tying their roots in limestone with their love of Southern eateries. With quality, local, and organic food as their main focus, Southern Stone strives to always provide their guests with an exceptional dining experience. With weekly specials, quick, attentive service, Southern Stone Restaurant provides delicious 5-star comfort food with a Southern charm at 2-star prices. Southern Stone Restaurant is part of Endeavor Hospitality's Wow Club.
This segment is brought to you by Courtroom Sports Grill in Bedford.
I guess I go first. That was an NCAA tournament game right there. And those guys have to be ready for that environment. and for that physicality of the game. It was a very physical game, and I don't believe they were that ready to handle that.
Yeah, there's so much length, and that's being Indiana's game. Everything goes to Trey Jackson-Davis, and they kind of clamped on the handcuffs those guys today, and the shooting did not go well from the beginning. They come out in the second half on fire, but it's Arizona is just too strong. They're a legitimate national championship contender.
Yeah, it's going to be them and UCLA in the Pac-12. And I cover the West, so they're one of the top two teams out here. But like Dean was talking about, no matter what the outcome was, this game's going to benefit both teams later on. But Arizona just got off to such a strong start, especially with their transition offense and their size. And, Indiana did a great job coming back, but as any coach would tell you, it is hard. You get down, you come back, you get tired, they go back up, you come back. It's just really hard to get over that hump.
Yeah, I sent out a tweet. Indiana made, I don't know, maybe 5 legit runs today, but Arizona answered every single time. And it was like, that's got to be so frustrating as a player. Like you said, it wears on you, but mentally, it's got to be so taxing to put that energy and effort, get back, and then have them do what they did time and time again.
Man, no doubt, man. Every time Indiana came back and made a run, Arizona answered it every time with either a 3 or and 1. And that's just a testament to Arizona. That's a big team. And like I said, once again, that's a team that they're going to have to be able to beat a team like that or that team to get where they're trying to get to, because that was a true NCAA tournament game right there tonight.
They needed some of that Pat Knight shooting out there, baby.
Do what?
They needed some of that Pat Knight shooting.
Oh, shoot. Maybe, but it's hard to shoot it from the bench. You heard talking about the shooting, now cheering off the bench or going to Kilroy Sports Bar. I can tell you about that. But the shooting, you heard talking to one of these other guys that got to play.
Hooligans was always my favorite, but I found out that was a favorite of Dean's as well back in the day.
Oh man, yeah, I couldn't get in Hooligans, man. Shoot, I was still 20 years old when we were going through everything, and so when I was finally able to get into Hooligans, it was my senior year, and I couldn't go during the season. And then the time I really, really wanted to go is when we lost to Richmond. And I remember walking past Hooligans and looking in the window, and I saw Richmond's team celebrating against us. So I kind of turned around and went on back to my room.
But they always saved me a seat at Kilroy Sports, so I had no problem.
Yeah. I've never been into that Kilroy's, but I was a KOK guy. Hell, they didn't have Kilroy Sports when I was in school. I'm too old.
Man, Kilroy's is great.
Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome. Pat, when's the last time you, besides last year, that was probably the first time you've been back to Bloomington in a while, I'm guessing?
Well, I go back every month to check on my dad, because, he's dealing with some health issues. And so I've actually been going back pretty much for the last 2 years, every so many months. And I actually got an apartment up in Indy by our offices because I go back so much just to check, on my parents.
What a great son.
Oh,
what a great son.
I don't know about that, but it's your parents. You gotta check on, especially, getting older sucks. And you see it with your parents and just people around you. And so, you want to spend as much time as you can while they're around.
You've been out here now. How long have you been out here in Vegas?
I'm going on my 9th year.
Wow.
9 years out here.
Amazing.
I couldn't hear.
We couldn't hear you.
We couldn't hear you.
Was it the Pacers that got you out here? Was it the Pacers that got you out here originally?
Yeah, it's actually Larry Bird when he hired me. He told me I had to move closer to California because I was going to be covering the West. And, he actually told me you don't want to live in L.A. And he suggested Phoenix. But then a good friend of my dad's, he's played in Indiana, Charlie Hall, back in the day when my dad was at Ohio State. He lived out here, and he's actually the one that talked me into coming out to Vegas. And then it helped that my wife wanted to move out here, and we don't have kids, so I jumped on it as fast as I could because I didn't want her to change her mind.
So you've worked with Larry Bird and Bob Knight. That is just an amazing style. But just the
Many people can say they've worked for those two legendary basketball figures.
Oh, yeah. I even said that. I did an interview for Indianapolis Star right when I got hired by the Pacers. And, I mean, I'm fortunate to work with two of the greatest in the game and two of the Indiana legends. I mean, not many people can say that at all.
And Dean, a long time in the NBA, and he did the TV sports show with, you all don't know this, Ray Thompson's father was a running back in the NFL, but they were good friends up in Minneapolis when Dean was with the Timberwolves, and they did a TV sports show together. Big Dean. Was it Dino? Was it Dean and Jerry? He should change his name to Jerry. It could have been the Dean and Jerry show.
No, man, it was like 4 guys on the panel, and it was myself, it was Daryl. We had a baseball guy, man. I'm trying to think who it was. We had a hockey guy, and we would get up there and talk about sports every week. And you know, Daryl and I pretty much crossing paths at the same time from Indiana into Minnesota. Still played the same era. You know, we became good friends real quick.
Las Vegas, it has become a sports town. But before I get to that, yesterday we were talking, and you were talking about how well Arizona travels, and you were expecting it to be a split, at worst, a split crowd, probably Arizona, Indiana. And I got to tell you, I think it was 90%, and I'm not 90% Indiana. Arizona had a patch over here, and like those two sections, and a little bit right here. The rest of it was all Indiana, which that was rather shocking. They took this place over.
I tell you, man, I wasn't expecting that. I've been here at this arena right here and seen many games. Steve Alford being in the Pac-12, and I come over here to see his team play, and they would play Arizona a few times, and Arizona people were all over. But I tell you right now, Indiana definitely was here. Indiana definitely took over this building. Indiana took over the MGM. Indiana took over New York. They had a pep rally across the street at New York at Beer House. I didn't even know anything about it. I just happened to fall into it with Jared Jeffries. Indiana, it was great to see everybody come out here and show out for everybody, because that made my day. That made my whole time this weekend, seeing all these Indiana people here.
Pat, that's being back in that environment. I know you were back for a game last year, but it's got to be pretty cool to, I'm sure a lot of people recognize you and want to talk to you.
No, it's like Dean said, this is great. You know, it's home, and it's the greatest fans, you know, in the country. And that was the thing, like when we went to Texas Tech, my dad and I always talked about, you know, football is number one in Texas. And that's the one thing that Indiana has over everybody. Basketball is the number one sport. And that's the one thing we missed when we went down to Texas. And, I mean, we still talk about after he retired. I got out of coaching, was in scouting. I mean, there's nothing better than Indiana basketball. The whole state, all the colleges there, but especially, I mean, Indiana University is special. The people are so nice when you run into them, and I always love seeing them. And so it was kind of special for me to see everybody. And I still have not been back to a game. I didn't.
I was just going to ask you, what are the chances of you coming making it to a game this year?
Well, it depends about with the draft, and I can't talk about individual players, but when I cross over, we cross over in February, and hopefully I'll get a chance to get sent down there. I got to go to Purdue for the first time in 20-some years last year, and that was a great atmosphere. So I'm looking forward to getting back to Bloomington, because I have not. The last time I was at Assembly Hall, it wasn't really for the game, is when my dad went back a few years ago, and that was special. But I look forward to getting back for a real game.
How you doing, man? And I'm sure I would love for you to get back there as well. And maybe we can get Dean to come back, and we'll go to Kilroy's.
Oh yeah!
Oh, no doubt, I'll be there.
I don't think my seat's there anymore, but I think
we'll
we can get in.
New seat. We'll get a new one.
Oh, man, we'll get you a brand new seat.
But we can go to Nick's. We're older now. We can go to Nick's.
We can get in all the spots now.
It's funny you say that. Joe Hillman is a good friend of the show. He comes on as well. But the last time I ran into him, he's upstairs at Nick's with the rest of the old people.
So we'll fit in.
Yeah, right on, man. Hey, I'm older than you, actually, which sucks for me. But I'm actually older than both of you, I think. But well, we've always got Nick's. Indiana's been down, guys, for years, a few years. But now Woody is bringing back the excitement, bringing back players. this level of game today against a title contender, a legit title contender in an believable environment. It's great to see that, but it's better to see Indiana competing on that level with those types of teams after these few years of blight, I guess you would call it. But what do you see that has been the key difference that Woody has done?
Woody has brought back family. I mean, it's all about Indiana history, and we haven't had that in a long time. He's brought some excitement back to Indiana fans. We haven't had that in a long time. So just even coming here into Vegas and me and having a chance to go to practice yesterday, how exciting that was for me just to be around that environment and just for these fans, because you could feel the energy back, and it hasn't been there in a long time. I don't live in Bloomington, and all I do is get to see everything from afar. But it's nice to see that everybody is. We got some excitement, and we have some promise that we all think that we can go somewhere. So it's nice.
And shoot, I forgot the other thing I was going to ask. But Pat, what about you? What have you seen? I know you don't get to watch as much, Bob. How often do you get to watch IU games?
Well, since we're not in my area, just a few times.
The time makes it difficult as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I see 3 to 5 games a week. But now I knew Arizona. Now, I mean, I've seen them a bunch, so I knew them. So that was nice to see in Indiana. But like Dean said, it's one of our own, especially one of coach's guys with the team. A lot of coaches are chicken shit when it comes. Can you say, are we on like regular radio? Or, well, a lot of these coaches are chicken shit. And, we'll only play home games, won't, get out of their comfort zone. And Woody knows. I mean, Woody's been in the NBA. I mean, did a great job coaching the NBA, and he's not going to back down for anybody. So, like I said, the fans, yeah, you're unhappy that they didn't win, but this is going to really help them, and they're going to do great in the Big Ten. This is going to help them make them stronger, and that's because of Woody. Woody puts them in the fire, and my dad was always the same way Dean could tell you, Todd, Larry, all the guys that are going through a coach. I mean, our pre-conference schedule is always tough, but that's the only way. I mean, the Big Ten is one of the best conferences in the country every year, and you've got to play people to get prepared, and that's what Woody's doing.
And appropriately playing this team today, because the Big Ten is full of teams that have really good big men. As a matter of fact, when they play Purdue, it's going to be a lot like what they played today, because Boyo, what was his name? I forget, but that dude is, what do you do with him? I mean, what are you going to do with that? He's just a mountain of a man.
We didn't do too much with him today. So I don't know what you're going to do with Edie either if you go and play like that. But like I said, that was a good test, because it wasn't Purdue and it wasn't Edie. But now you got to take this game and see what you did wrong and hopefully correct those things. And, I mean, there's no time for crying and wasting. You got Kansas next week. So this doesn't get no easier. It's another NCAA game.
Well, what they had today is going to be the exact opposite next week. They had all this love and adoration from 90% of the fans. It's going to be worse than that at Fog Island, because there will be virtually no Indiana fans in there. It'll be all Kansas.
We hated playing there when we were at Texas Tech. That is the hardest place. I think I averaged getting beat by 32 there, and I think my dad averaged getting beat by 30, so I can't feel too bad about it. That is probably one of the best, along with Assembly Hall, but college atmospheres ever. But again, it's going to get these guys prepared when they go on the road, to go play Purdue, play at Illinois, Michigan State, Michigan. So you have to do it. So some people, may complain about the results early on, but I think when the season's over with, they'll see that, Woody has a plan to get these guys ready, because it's a marathon, not a sprint. And it's not just about the conference. You want to make a deep run in the tournament. So there's still a lot of basketball to go.
Earlier, Dean mentioned family, and no one made a bigger deal on that than your dad. Whether it was with playing rivals or it was always about, Woody is a great example. And the guys he played with, how much respect and love they all have for your dad. I mean, players always come back and loved being around, and that was generally the case. But that was another thing that didn't happen over the last several years. Dean and Pat, having that back, how important to the program is that, Pat?
Well, I think because it's the history. All these guys like Dean, I mean, they're the history. And I'm a fan myself just because, I mean, I grew up around it. You know, I was my dad's son and grew up around it.
Look, turn around. Look who you got behind you.
Now, what are you guys talking about?
Man, this is so great to see Don here, man. This is great.
Look at that picture.
Hey,
That's a picture that says 1,000 words there, man.
Travel safe.
Travel safe. Thanks. So great to see Don here today, man. That was
what a beautiful picture that is. You gotta get that thing framed and send it home for Christmas.
But no, family's important, you know, and that's the one thing. And Woody, you know, not to stress the importance of, you know, playing for my dad, but just all the players that have played there. I mean, he reaches out, you know, to everybody, and it's just, and I think a lot of the guys, a lot of us will tell you, not that you didn't feel welcome, but you didn't hear from some of the other guys. And it's kind of like, I think there, which was a mistake, trying to get away from my dad's guys, you know, instead of embracing.
Obviously, it was.
And so it's part of coaching now. I mean, we all get hired to be fired. And so, I mean, the past is the past and you get over it. But I thought they try to stay away from it too much. But now we got it back. And it's just nice to be able to root for Indiana again myself personally, because I'll be honest, a few years there, I really had, not that I rooted against, but I had no interest in them.
Right. No, and understandably. So that is just having that all back. That's so important in Indiana because, let's be truthful, Indiana is Bob Knight. Bob Knight is Indiana. There's no way to separate those two, man. They are locked in basketball and sports history, and they need to be together. So I am so happy, and I know the fans are happy, but that is having that is just one of the most important things for this program. I don't think it could have healed had that not happened.
No, I agree with you. If you look at all the great programs, you know, with the UCLA, with the, you know, Wooden, Coach Krzyzewski now, you know, retiring from Duke. I mean, you know, Arizona didn't do a great job when Coach Olsen retired. It took them, you know, years to finally get somebody to carry the torch. And it's not like these schools just want to be known just for Bob Knight or John Wooden or Krzyzewski. I mean, they'd like to get some other guys' names to put up there. But for me, for those guys to get put up there, they need to embrace the past, not run away from it. And that's with Woody. With the way Woody's going, I mean, they'll be talking about him in the same breath, you know, hopefully as they did my dad or some of the other great coaches that have started traditions at other universities.
Well, I mean, everybody loves Woody, but he better get a lot of Dean Garrett's in there and hang some of those banners up if he's going to be compared to Bob Knight. But he talks about your dad all the time, and whether it's in pressers, and he relates back to them, and he openly talks about it. How you learn this from Coach. Coach taught me this, and that is also important for this program because the players that are here now are getting a piece of that tradition that they would not have gotten if Woody was not on the sideline or someone very similar to him.
That's 100% true because, like I said, I went to practice yesterday, and I saw Woody and everybody coming off the bus, and he embraced me right away. And he said, "Hey, I want you to say something to the team." He said that right away when I saw him. And Coach Crean was great. Coach Crean was great at bringing in the history of Indiana basketball.
That ain't no turning the lights out, folks.
Coach Miller wasn't as accepting. I didn't even meet him, but Woody did a great job. And you know, this is a historic program. So historic is history. So we have a lot of it. And if these young guys, they weren't even born when last time we won a championship or when Pat left. So if they don't get a chance to embrace it and understand where they came from, you're never gonna know. It's like having a legendary father like Pat. Pat knows his father, and Pat knows what his dad has done, and it's huge. And you got to be able to know where you came from or where you're going into. And I think Woody's doing a good job of doing it.
And what's great about the family here, the fans, you know, most places they only accept the stars. Here, as long as you were on that roster and you made it through playing for coach, they accept you. I mean, there's some fans that actually come up to me, think I actually played. And, you know, because time passes and you get better as time goes. But that's the one thing I always loved about Indiana. It wasn't just the stars they accepted. They accepted the whole roster 1 through 13.
No doubt.
You're always family, and they always come up to you no matter how many points you average or what. And that's special. But that's the new generation's got to learn that.
You mentioned being able to cheer for Indiana again and enjoy all that. How hard was it for you to not be able to do that when you had to go through that? And what does it mean to you personally being able to bring that all back together?
It sucked, you know.
All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thanks to everybody who stuck around today, especially early on. We appreciate you guys sticking around with us as always. Thanks to Dustin Schutte for joining me this morning. As always, thanks to Don Fischer for coming on with us. Thanks to Jim for stopping by, and thanks to Dustin Dopirak as well. And thanks to you guys who are still listening, sticking around. We appreciate you as always, and we will talk to you tomorrow. We got Mike DeCourcy coming up tomorrow. We got Chronic Hoosier. We'll see if we have anything else lined up for you. Dustin Schutte should be back with us, and our old friend Jim Coy will be back in Bloomington, here to talk about all things Indiana basketball and much more as they prepare to take on the Kansas Jayhawks in Lawrence, Kansas at Fall Gallon this Saturday. It's going to be another tough one for the Hoosiers. Thanks for listening once again, guys. We appreciate it. I appreciate it. And we will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat